DCO Advisers is a new business we've formed to give integrated advice to promoters of large national infrastructure projects across the whole piece of property, environmental, legal, planning and communications.
DCO Advisers is an answer to a very complex process that has come out of the Planning Act 2008 for major infrastructure projects. It's about bringing together specialist legal and consultancy advice to get you through this new system that we're now coming to grips with.
The big projects here are nuclear power stations, new railway works, new motorways, rail freight interchanges, new power stations, wind farms, those sort of projects in the energy, transport, water and waste sectors.
The new system has brought together many different consenting regimes that previously existed, which tended to take an extremely long time to go through the processes. And the idea of the new consenting regime is it's kind of a one-stop shop for major infrastructure projects, very much geared to early decisions and a front-loaded process to get you to that.
Well, I think DCO Advisers is so relevant because this is a brand new process that was put into place 18 months ago, and promoters of these projects are now just beginning to get to grips with it. And there are a lot of challenges to it. It's much more of a front-loaded process than it was before. The old processes were back-loaded, whereas now applications for these projects have to be pretty good first time round, and that requires integrating all these considerations of legal issues, planning issues, property issues, issues to do with environmental impact assessment and issues to do with consultation. Consultation is a key part of the regime, consulting all local stakeholders and communities properly, and all of that needs project managing together so that the application submitted is pretty good.
It's moved from a system that had a number of different consenting regimes, which typically took many years to get through to consents and decisions. And the idea of the new system is to combine a number of these different regimes and take a different approach, very much front-loaded, working with the communities and the regulators to come to a much shorter decision-making process.
Another key change is to get away from long public inquiries, and instead of those we're having what they call an inquisitorial process, where the decision maker and the planning inspectorate are going to be looking at applications very much on paper through a written representations process, so there'll be none of these year-long public inquiries that have been held in the past.
The benefits, I think, of this DCO Advisers approach is that we're bringing together a lot of different expertise and skills which we can combine to help project manage and help a promoter through this much more complex system. Now we have a multi-headed consenting process, whereas typically we've been used to very much individual consenting regimes.
This new system replaces a number of different processes, some of which have been around in various different shapes or sizes for over 100 years. The modern town and country planning system, which is also replaced by this process for big projects, came in 1948. So some of the processes were obviously older than others, but they've grown up over the years and they've become quite outmoded and archaic and quite clunky, and the whole idea was to replace all of them for the very large projects that this new system applies to in a self-contained modern way.
This has the potential to streamline the process for consenting, as it's brought a number of different systems and consenting regimes together. Previously you had to deal with them on a separate basis, often one after the other, whereas now it can all be dealt with in one go, it can all be brought together, but equally in doing that it means you've got to get it all right at the same time.
Under this new process, there's a lot of emphasis placed on what the Infrastructure Planning Commission calls the total application. That is, making sure the application that is applied for is a comprehensive one that's been well prepared and well consulted on, and that is a vital part of this new process. The opportunity to change applications once they've been submitted is much more curtailed than under the old processes, and we've already seen with one application by Covanta Energy for a energy from waste plant in Merthyr Tydfil in Wales that has now been withdrawn, that they tried to change that having already submitted the application, and the IPC told them they couldn't.
Because this is dealing with major infrastructure projects, these are very significant investments. We're talking hundreds of millions to billions for new nuclear projects.
I think promoters and their advisors are beginning to understand the new process. It's been in place now for energy and transport schemes for over 18 months. And I think, yes, they're beginning to understand it, but I think there's a long way to go. We've seen just in the last month 4 or 5 applications being submitted after quite a lull, quite an understandable lull, but I think we are really only at the end of the beginning in terms of really understanding how in practice this new regime has got to be made to work.
With BDB and Jill Hearn, we've brought together two practices that were very much looking at this, I think, in the same way, and we've come at it from the point of view of having integrated services ourselves. We've each covered the planning, the legal, the environmental, the surveying, and also, interestingly, the consultations, which not many practices have in-house. So we've actually come together with an integrated package ourselves, and then by overlaying the two, we've got a truly integrated approach to both the legal and the practitioner aspects.